Welcome back, everybody. And news. We have news. I have news. So what we're going to do now is more sport-specific videos. So Formula One. This is going to be a Formula One only video. So I'm gonna probably. Well, we'll see how it goes. We'll see what comes up, because at the end of the day, the reason why I started doing this is because I want to talk about what I find interesting. It's not just going to be like a news show. I'm going to be like, oh, like I said, I think I've said this before as well. Like, oh, Man U beat West Ham. Okay, cool. Nothing really relevant happened. I mean, I'm not going to like cover apart from some of the things like Formula One, because it's quite dramatic. It's once per week and nothing else happens. In football, because there's so many games, it's like, okay, well, the championship's not done yet. There's so much going on. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go individual, and then just put. It's going to be more videos, so there's going to be more chance to be okay, cool. That's a Formula One, that's golf, that's tennis, that's blah blah blah, rather than sifting through. Because I feel like it's easier, even though I've broken them down into obviously with the chaptering thing, but I think it's going to be easier going forward to keep track of things, and it's going to be easier for the wider community to find videos, rather than you see a thumbnail with Formula One and there's like loads of stuff in it, which is what I want to put across. I want to obviously put across a diversity of sports, but I think it'd be easier going forward to break them down per video. So a couple of videos this week. Obviously this one's going to be about Formula One, and now we're moving into the winter. So obviously we've got hoodies are back out. We're moving into winter season. It's getting cold, but nothing cold about last weekend's Formula One. Like this season, like I promise you, I've been watching Formula One for a long time, and it just feels like it was certainly in this new era. It's very much dominance based. Like, well, I say this new era, like since Schumacher started, it's been a general period, apart from a couple of seasons, of one team dominating and winning all of it. So Schumacher won 5 in a row, the early 2000s. Then there was a period of a couple of seasons, 3 or 4, 5 seasons, where it was sort of a few teams were winning. Then Red Bull won 4 in a row, and then Mercedes have won the last 7 in a row. So most of the last 20 years have been won by a specific team. This year, having a battle go this far, I mean, because I think people forget, with Formula One, people forget a couple of years ago, 2018, 2017, it was Ferrari were the better team. Ferrari were better than Mercedes for most of the season. And it was only after, the first year, 2017, when in Singapore, when Vettel, Raikkonen and Verstappen crashed, when Hamilton was like 4th or something in Singapore, off the line, Verstappen, Vettel and Raikkonen crashed in that dramatic scene. They all get wiped out. Hamilton goes off and wins the race, and the momentum swings completely. Then the following year, Ferrari were also good until Vettel just went off in the gravel in Germany and blew his title lead, and Hamilton won the race then. So it's enjoying this season. This season is as rare as you might think it is. So for anyone who's, I guess, not a diehard Formula One fan, or they might be hearing about it, or maybe they just watch this and they pick it up from me and they think, oh, it might not be that crazy. It is that crazy. Like, this season is so back and forth. Like, every single race is a fight between Red Bull, well, Max and Lewis. The strategy has to be on point. The qualifying has to be on point. The teammates have to sacrifice themselves completely. Like, I do really wonder if it was more, if all 4 drivers on both teams were more balanced and they were all going for the World Championship, what would happen? Because I think obviously it's easy for Red Bull to prioritise Max. It's easy for Mercedes to take grid penalties to push Bottas and try and make Bottas hold up Max. Like, if Bottas didn't have to hold Max up and he was going for the race win, it would be even crazier, to be fair. But you can't have 4 drivers. You can. It hasn't worked out well in the past. Red Bull didn't do that too well. McLaren didn't do that well with Alonso and Hamilton. And when you have 2 top drivers, it just doesn't really work, because only one person can win the race, and you have to. Strategy can only really work for one person, so you can't really pit. If your teammates are running 1 and 2, and you have to give one a preferential pit stop treatment, you give them the tyres earlier, only one of them can literally pit earlier, unless you double stack them, which is quite rare, both of them going to the pit at the same time. You can do that, but it's just risky. So one person naturally will get an advantage no matter what happens. You can't help both guys win the race. And then obviously someone's actually going to have to, if they have to overtake each other, how do you do that? You end up like what Max and Lewis to keep doing, or what's happened with the Red Bulls many times, or what happened with Lewis and Nico Rosberg in Spain. So anyway, this race, again, like this is rain thing. I've been talking about this rain thing for a while. Like people want rain. They always wet race. They're excited about a wet race. Like this is probably the one. Okay, fair enough. Only because it ended up working out well for the title protagonists, and you had someone else on pole. But generally speaking, I've said this before. Like rain isn't good because people just crash. It all gets mixed up, and there's no granted there is a lot of skill to driving in the wet. You need a lot more strategy, a lot more control on the car. It's not just who's got the fastest car, go off you go. It does mix things up for the neutral, but from a consistency point of view, it's just such a mess. Like, especially a race like this weekend, where it was dry and then it got wet in the space of like one lap. Like I've not seen. I don't think I've actually ever seen rain hit that quickly. They've gone from, was it lap 40 something, 47, or lap 38, 39, they were like, oh, rain's on the horizon. And then suddenly the umbrellas are going up and we're thinking, all right, where's this rain? And then as you see Norris going round, it's dry, and then literally they go round a corner and there's just spray everywhere. And it's like, what? Like that was about as dramatic as anything non-contact this season. Like that scene, I was just like, where on earth did this rain come from? And suddenly it's just coming down, and the strategy. But anyway, we'll wind it back to the beginning because I've kind of jumped forward here. Starting from the beginning, the qualifying was wet dry as well. They said all weekend it's going to be wet on. Well, they said it's definitely going to rain on Friday. So Friday got washed out completely. So they lost FP3, so they couldn't do FP3. Qualifying they knew was going to be probably wet at some point, and then the race they were like it might rain. But rain was on the horizon again, so I think we've had enough of rain now. But anyway, so the initial runs, Mercedes were much better. Like Verstappen took a grid penalty. So what we said last week about him maybe taking a grid penalty, he took that grid penalty. So he put a new engine in. That means he's always going to start from the back. So he didn't take part in qualifying at all, which is smart because you don't need to run the engine. You're going to start last anyway. So and it's wet, so you don't need to risk it. So he was out there, quick installation lap, and went in and then saved the car. Bottas, they said, so they announced like midway through qualifying, he was going to take an engine penalty as well, and that was specifically to be further down the order to stop Max piling through the field, which, as I was saying a minute ago, like in terms of team games, like that's nuts. I mean, I've never seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I mean, the grid penalty thing is kind of new because they're capping it now. Back in the day, they didn't have as stringent a cap, and people were changing engines all the time. But nowadays, with the rules as they are, I've never seen a team say, right, we're going to start you further back to block this guy. And then it turns out he didn't even block him in the end. He just, Verstappen just went past him anyway. So in the end, it turned out to be completely pointless. And it kind of ruined Bottas's race. I mean, it probably would have been better if Bottas was further up to block Verstappen when he got there. I mean, that'd have made more sense. I think that was a bit stupid. But they are saying, well, they're rumouring that the Mercedes engines are not in the best of shape. So maybe it was a safety thing, but who knows. But anyway, Lewis was cleaning up in qualifying. He was well ahead. Norris and Alonso were doing quite well. The first run, it was on intermediates because it was wet. So the first run in qualifying, Q3, Hamilton was 3/4 of a second in front. So he was way in front, cruising, no problem. And then the track starts to dry a bit. And obviously everyone's thinking, oh, we could go into soft tyres and make a big difference. But it's still kind of slippery, but we don't really know. So Norris goes out there. Norris and Russell go out there on slick tyres, on soft tyres. So Hamilton comes in to the pits and he hits the barrier. Like, this doesn't, I've never seen him do it anyway. People can do it because some of these pit entries are quite tight. He hits the barrier on the way in, breaks his front wing on the way into the pit. Bottas is coming in behind him as well. So Lewis goes into the pits, they're trying to look at his wing. They have to take it off and try and fix the car. Bottas can't get into his pit stops, he has to wait. That didn't end up mattering because I don't think he wouldn't have been able to get round and do 2 laps. So both of them have been compromised. They can only do one. They obviously have to go round and then they do one fast lap. Whereas everybody else has a chance to go round and do 2 fast laps. So you get more time for the tyres to wear into the ground and get more grip. So 1 lap is, you're probably not going to get out there in time. So Lewis was well ahead at that point, but the 2 behind him had pitted for these soft tyres. So it turns out that Hamilton went out again. He spins on his lap, so he's out of it, or he's out of the chance to go for another fast lap. Norris and Russell both set faster laps. Norris is on pole for the first time ever. Russell again is in the top 3 in the wet. And then Carlos Sainz got in there in second as well. So Hamilton starts 4th. Verstappen at the back. Leclerc was at the back. And Bottas was somewhere in the middle towards the back. So off we go in the race. Sainz gets the jump on Norris. And Hamilton's flying down the inside. Norris, obviously, because Sainz has jumped in front of him, Norris has gone out to the right to get out of the way. That blocks Hamilton. So Hamilton ends up having to come on the brakes. He ends up 7th as we go around the corner. So it's terrible start for Lewis. And it's funny because when you watch it back, you watch back the onboards, Max at the very, very back, he isn't exactly flying through the field. He takes his foot off the gas and he cruises round in last just to not get involved in that first corner action, which I found quite interesting. But anyway, it kind of like passed on through there. Max cruised up to Valtteri eventually at some point and just overtook him, like no danger whatsoever. And then everyone's kind of stuck in what they call a DRS train. So there's a car in front who's obviously quick enough, but when it's hard to overtake, if you can't overtake, you're going to get stuck. So you've got a slowish car, which was George Russell in this case. Then you've got 4 fast cars behind them, all with DRS to make them go faster because they're close. They're between the second of each other. So it was from Russell all the way down, Stroll, Alonso, Ricciardo, Hamilton. And everyone was kind of stuck in that formation. So Norris was gone, Sainz was with him, and then, or the other way around, Sainz was gone, Norris was with him, and then you had Russell and everyone else down to Hamilton in 6th. And it was just going through like in formation for a long time. And then eventually everyone starts pitting in front. So I think Stroll came in, Russell came in, and then Hamilton got past. Oh yeah, and Ricciardo got pitted as well. And then after that, Hamilton was setting fastest lap. So it kind of went off from there. So Hamilton was clearly stuck. He was clearly the fastest car on the track. Just he was stuck behind four other people who had DRS to push them along. So it wasn't, the benefit of being faster was kind of negated. So it was clearly very hard to pass. But Hamilton got it done eventually. And then he starts really chasing down Norris, who was leading the race. Norris and Sainz were leading the race. A lot of the pit stops were slow. So Sainz, Perez, and Leclerc's pit stops were all slow, which kind of took them out of it. So Hamilton kind of gained a little bit there. Max's pit stop was average, but because Perez's pit stop was slow and he was ahead of him, Perez ends up coming out in front of Max, and there was another car in between them. Holds them all up. So Matt at that point, it's kind of contrary to popular belief, for 85% of the race, Max was nowhere. Even though he was chasing down Hamilton, he was getting quite close, but the pit stops worked against him. He couldn't overtake. He was in 7th at one point. Before the rain came, he was 7th, and he was going to finish for sure 7th, just based on pace. He couldn't overtake. His cars was this and all that kind of frustration. So all that was kind of going along. But it was clear to me that the clear air, Hamilton was eating up it was noticeable. Like at the beginning, nobody could really overtake. Max was kind of getting through eventually, but it wasn't easy. So if you're following a car, you're not going to be going that quick. When you get into clear air, you're flying. Like Norris was flying just the whole race. And Hamilton, when he got into clear air, when Ricciardo got out of the way, he was absolutely flying. So pit stops were going along. Hamilton was eating up the time. He got to within 2 seconds. They're 40 seconds down the road. So Norris and Hamilton are gone. Everyone else is kind of scrapping for position. they're all quite close. You had you had like Sainz and Verstappen and Perez are all sort of in a bunch. Norris and Hamilton are gone. Hamilton's chasing him down, and then like I said, lap 39, there was a radio call saying there's rain on the forecast by the end. I think it was Leclerc's engineer said 5 laps we could see rain. So everyone's like, okay, this could get quite interesting. But Hamilton got up to Norris, but he couldn't quite overtake. Again, talk about the clear air and dirty air stuff. When he's right up within 2 seconds, it's hard to close up because you're getting the air disturbed from the car in front. So Hamilton was struggling-ish to get up to and past Norris. Lap 46 is when it all changed. The umbrellas go up in the stands, and at that point, everyone's thinking, okay, it is raining now. Obviously, the team radios to the teams, they're like, okay, it's getting slippery, blah, 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 do you want to come in? They're like, no, it's fine. Then Norris goes off on the next lap, and then Bottas and Russell pitted that very lap. So Mercedes obviously gone, okay, cool, we'll pit Bottas and see what's what. The lap after that, Leclerc spins, Sainz spins, and then Ricciardo goes off as well. But all of this stuff we don't see. It was quite frustrating because on the actual TV broadcast, we were just watching Norris, we were watching Verstappen, like all these different things. There's so much going on. You had the leaders, you had the midfield. They were showing so much. They weren't showing us the guys going off, but they were saying on the radio to Norris, there's guys going off, and Norris was like, no. Norris was kind of panicking a bit. He was like, no, we'll do this, we're fine. Verstappen pits the next lap. And then after that, they're telling Lewis, well, that very lap, they told Lewis to pit, and he was like, no, it's not wet enough to pit, but I want to stay out, even though it's spitting. It's obviously raining in some sectors, but a lot of the track was dry. Eventually, they say, no, Lewis, you're pitting. They forced him to pit, or they told him to pit, and he agreed. He pits now when he's like just behind Norris. Norris is out. He's like, no, I'm staying out. It's dry. And that very lap, like that was when the spray comes, and then obviously when he's following a car behind, spray everywhere. It's absolutely soaking wet. He's limping around trying to get through. He spins off later on. Hamilton just sails past him, and at this point, obviously everyone is pitted behind. So Bottas, Verstappen, Raikkonen, all these guys at the back who have pitted are starting to come through the field because everyone in front is creeping around, and we're talking like 20, 30, 40 seconds they're losing by being out on these dry tyres. So they were out there struggling. Leclerc and Perez didn't pit. Even after all this was going on, even after Norris spun, they still didn't pit. The lap after it they pitted, and that's why I'll put the graphic up. This is why all these positions got screwed up, because Leclerc stayed out for way too long. I mean, he was running around, I think he was running 4th or 5th. He stayed out for way too long. He ends up losing so much time, goes to the back. Norris is screwed it completely. So he ends up pitting on the 2 laps from the end. He ends up coming down in 8th. He was lucky not to get a penalty because he tried to come into the pits. He missed the pit line, and then he crossed the line where you're not supposed to. I mean, that kind of got overlooked because, I mean, okay, I know it's wet, but there's a reason why the pit exit is as it is. Hamilton did something similar in Germany when it was wet, but it was more like a team issue. He crossed the line going out the pit rather than coming in. So I can't remember, I don't think he got any penalties for it. So I get it, it was fine. But yeah, everyone finished. Hamilton ends up winning the race. I mean, I think some of these things get overlooked. So there's winners and losers. So the three big winners, the biggest winner for this race was Max, for sure. The second biggest would have been Lewis, definitely. And the third biggest was Mercedes, because they got the race win in the end. And Bottas came 5th. I mean, Bottas was, like Verstappen, absolutely nowhere. Well, obviously Bottas really was nowhere. He was down in 14th. Bottas is a curious one. Like sometimes he really just gives up and just cannot be bothered, even though he started the race really well. So Bottas was absolutely nowhere, and then he ends up coming 5th. They're the big winners. I mean, Perez, Leclerc, and Norris obviously were the big losers. But Max came from obviously last. He came all the way up to 7th. He was 7th and he was cruising. He wasn't going to get any higher than that because the guys in front of him were pulling away. They had nowhere to go. Then the rain came and he pitted early. Max is one of those really, really good drivers in the wet. So he pitted early for these intermediate tyres while everyone else stayed out for too long. And the gaps were close enough that obviously if you lose 6 seconds in a lap, which is minimum what you'd lose by being on bad tyres, you're just going to jump. You're going to jump to second. So the jump from last to second, it looks better than it was. I think it looks better than it was because, he drove to seventh, which is bang average in terms of a fastest car at the back driving through the field. Seventh is like bang average. It's like you should get to maybe top 5. I don't know how good the top people are, but seventh is like, yeah, fine. You did a fine job. Like most people should do that. It's nothing special. And then obviously he made an excellent call to go on the right tyres, and that put him up to second. So, and given that he should have lost a lot of points, losing only 6 points because Lewis didn't get the fastest lap. To lose only, he lost 7 points. To lose only 7 points is an absolute win when you should have lost 15 or more. Or even way more. But given that Max was 7th, he would have finished 7th for sure, which is 6 points. 1, 2, 4. Yeah, 6 points. So you'd have lost 19 points, really. And you've only lost 7. So you've saved yourself some points there. Lewis, obviously, given that he made 2 mistakes in qualifying and was 7th at one point as well, winning the race, chasing down Norris, who was a long gone leader, pitting at the right time. He's come out of this quite well. And obviously Mercedes got a big lead in the Constructors' Championship now. Lewis only leads Max by 2 points, but Mercedes lead by 33. So that's 33 points is going to be hard to overturn. So we could get a situation. It doesn't happen very often where a driver wins a World Championship and his team doesn't. But if Max is going to win the World Championship, I don't think Red Bull will win the Constructors. I think that's the only thing I could be not sure about, but it looks that way. Because barring DNFs, if things go as they do, if everyone finishes in 1-2, 1-3, blah, 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 Mercedes should win the World Championship again. It's a case of will Lewis beat Max? And going forward, Lewis has to take an engine penalty still, probably. He will. And it's probably going to have to be in the next 2 races because Red Bull, in terms of the last 7 races, Red Bull are pretty good in Brazil and in Mexico. So they're normally quite good. And even though they've not won, Max won the last race in Brazil. Lewis did win the last race in Mexico, but Red Bull have always been good there because of the thin air. For some reason, I don't know why. I actually don't. I need to look into that. I know it's something to do with their turbos, that their car runs better at that high altitude. The Mercedes never had that kind of car, but this year all the cars I say all the cars, Red Bull's car is wildly different, and so is Mercedes, to be fair. So it's going to be either Turkey or USA. USA is a track you probably can take a grid penalty on, but it depends. Yeah, there's some long straights, and Lewis does like that track, so I would expect them to do normal in Turkey, and then in America, Lewis will take that grid penalty, and then see how far he can get. Hopefully, if Bottas can be good in that one, win that race, maybe Lewis get up to top 5 and limit the gap. You have to win. I think these next 2 races might decide the World Championship. Like these are the 2, like Turkey and America might decide it, because after that you've got 2 that Red Bull should win, and then you've got a track that we've never been to before in Saudi Arabia, and then there's a to be confirmed race before Saudi Arabia, which they don't know what it's going to be yet. It could be anywhere, and then obviously Abu Dhabi is the last one, which Max won last year. So in terms of from Hamilton's point of view, the championship is in these next 2 races. Like these last 2, Monza and Russia, he should have won. Well, he should have won both. Obviously Max took him out in Monza, so it's kind of even. Lewis took Max out in Silverstone, but he might have won that. So it's kind of even. In terms of taking each other out, it's probably even. Hopefully it doesn't happen anymore, because now it's sort of, from here on, it'd be bad if someone else DNFs. But going forward, I think it's definitely in Max's favour. If I could beat either one, given that you're only 2 points behind, but Hamilton's got to take a grid penalty, you'd rather be Max at this point. But well, from a driver's point of view, from a team point of view, Mercedes are in a they're in a good position, I would say, for sure. So I think going forward, these next two races are it. I mean, Turkey, Hamilton won the World Championship in Turkey last year. It was another one of these races like Russia, and he dominated that race on strategy and racecraft. But we don't know what it's like in the dry. But I think Red Bull were quite good there before it started raining. So it's Turkey and America. That's where the World Championship for Lewis is anyway. Max, I think you'd look at it, you think there's a couple races he can win. It's a case of limiting the damage in Italy and Russia, which he has done. So yeah, we will see. Like I said, from day one, from Bahrain all the way through Imola, all the way through now. There's a boring period in the middle where there wasn't a lot of competition. I think Mercedes did add a lot of good upgrades around Britain around that kind of time. But yeah, we're back now, and obviously Lewis leads by 2 points. It's gonna be fascinating. Like these races from now on, I mean, it's been unmissable all year, but it's super unmissable now. Like you just can't. Every single race you have to watch, every practice session, every qualifying session is going to matter, and all these engine reliability, teamwork, weather. It's gonna come and be pretty tight from here. So be back. Nothing this weekend. This weekend's a week off, and then next week is Turkey. Turkey's a big one, man. Turkey, and then Turkey and America are the big ones, and then we'll see what we're like after that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed Formula 1 specifics from the tables. No sofa. Well, there is still a sofa just over there, but we're gonna do more stuff like this, so you can sit there and just listen to Formula 1 or listen to whatever else you want. So I will see you again next week, of course.